So we smiled because the thumbnail always looks crazy. And I can't stand when I go on and I see my face and I'm like, you know.
What's happening?
I know. So anyway, that was I really liked the episode. I liked the interview more when I actually had the chance to watch it and listen to it afterwards. I think that we talked about some really great things. Hi, Gwen. So we just did the watch party, which I was really happy that there were so many people who stayed on for as long as they did. It was a pretty long conversation.
Yes, thank you guys so much for hanging in there and really picking up on some of those gems we were really hoping you'd catch. I know I kind of cut off early on that question of what you would tell your 16-year-old self, and then what she might say to you. Do you want to answer that now?
Yes, actually, yeah. So I think we'll figure out why it cut out, and maybe we'll, get it up there. But what the answer to the question of what I would say to my 16-year-old self today is to just remember who you are, remember yourself, don't forget, and stay true to yourself. And I would also tell my 16-year-old self that, sometimes things can be uncertain and scary and things don't always work out exactly in the way that you planned, but stay true to yourself as a roadmap and as a guidepost along the way, and to really also listen to that voice inside of you that so often will let you know when you're on track and when you maybe aren't so much on track.
Really listening. I mean, I feel like that's the biggest thing I picked up from that interview is just not only like listening, just that, listen to yourself, but really more like learning just how to listen and what are those flags for when it's time to just sit with things and just own your stuff.
Yeah.
That big part about like, taking responsibility, for your place in whatever's happening, relationships, work, life, everything.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Absolutely. And the listening is, comes in a lot of, or the things to listen to come in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's really listening to the feeling that you have on the inside, or listening to, there's a lot of talk today. We were talking about this earlier this week, Vietnam. There's a word, trigger. We talk a lot about this word trigger. Or I've heard.
Sade, where you at?
I know. A lot about, we should tag her. Let's tag her in there. And where is she? Okay, we'll figure that out in a second. But reaching across the table. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Sorry. But anyway, I hear a lot about this word trigger. You triggered me. And really what a trigger is nothing more than an alarm to yourself that there's something that you really do want to pay attention to. There's something going on that is tapping into something that's already happening within yourself. And that's really no more, that's really what a trigger actually is. It's an alarm, to really just pay attention. Hey, Sade. So we were talking about triggers and the things that trigger you and what to actually do with those triggers. I think so often I hear people say, this person triggered me or that triggered me. And that's great, because what that means is that there's an awareness,
right,
and that the person's paying attention to what's happening inside of them, which is phenomenal. Great thing to do.
I'm trying to get really used to seeing that as a great thing.
It is.
I feel like so much of like feeling triggered is like feeling jarred and like taken out of something, but I think I'm figuring out how to take the taking out part and really sitting with it and just being like, okay, but what is this really pointing me towards? Other than just feeling really messed up when, the holidays come around and Auntie wants to ask me, oh, so why are you not married yet? Or what's up with these kids? Or you got a new man? And all this stuff. And it's just like, okay, I wasn't ready. But, just really answering those questions.
Absolutely.
For myself.
Yeah, I just really quickly, Brian, hey, so happy you're here, and thank you for inviting so many of your friends to the group. Really excited about that and really appreciate it. Hey, Esther. Hey, Sade, she's playing Triggered by Janae Aiko. Good for her. Don't play that. Listen, let's talk here about it. Yeah, so it's really, let me close the balcony door. Let's talk a little bit about that dinner table, that especially since the holidays are coming around, and it is such an alarm trigger time for so many people and in so many families, where you kind of are bearing your soul in front of people.
They're putting you on the spot.
Yeah, and I think the triggers are really uncomfortable sometimes, or they feel uncomfortable in the moment, and they only feel uncomfortable because that is the label that we've put on it. So it's like, oh, I feel something, let me run away from it. And that's exactly the opposite of what you want to do, because what happens is that when you ignore those internal alarms, they get louder and louder and louder and louder,
messier,
and they come closer and closer and closer until you cannot avoid dealing with them. So my advice, my unsolicited advice that I'm going to share anyway, is that when you're feeling those alarms, those triggers, whatever it is that you want to call it, or however you want to label it, when you feel that discomfort, let's just call it that, do something about it. And the first step is being aware of it. You know, and you can't always deal with the thing in the moment. So sometimes it's like, I'm feeling something about this, and I'm going to shelve that until later on. But when you have that moment, when you have those few moments to kind of check in with yourself, which I'm hoping you're all doing every day, every morning, and before you go to bed, great way to really help to make sure that you're not carrying things around and snowballing things. But whenever you have that moment, to really sit down and really consider what it is that triggered you, take the time to ask yourself, hi, Esther, what's going on? What about that made me feel uncomfortable? And the real zinger there is, okay, self, what are you trying to tell me? You know, and what do I need to deal with? What is the thing that you're trying to tell me? And when you do that, what you're doing is you're going inward to the space where you really can affect change. You know, I know that for me, there was a time in my life where everything was about what other people were doing. And so I was the poster child for, she's doing this.
FOMO, is it?
What's FOMO?
Fear of missing out.
What is that?
Fear of missing out. It's like, it's kind of like when we're doing with social media so much. Like, oh, look at so-and-so's living their best life. This person's doing that. I wish I was there. I want to be there. Why didn't I get invited? Why am I not making this happen for myself? Yes,
and I'm referring to this idea of, I'm pissed off and it's that person's fault.
Oh,
or I got triggered and it's that person's fault.
Yes.
You know, this person spoke to me and I feel I'm triggered. And so now that person becomes the enemy in the situation.
Absolutely.
And for a while in my life, I was absolutely, hey, Sheena. I was absolutely in that place of, you know, they're doing that. This person's, it's all them. It's not me. And guess what, people? The best gift I can give you is, it really is you. And that's actually a wonderful thing, because that is where you can really affect change. That's where you can really look to say, oh, this person spoke this way to me, or this person did this thing. What is coming up inside of me? And what is it that I'm not paying attention to inside of me? Where do I need to set a boundary? Where do I need to make sure that I'm taking care of myself? What is it about my past that is going to stay, that's driving a behavior that's going to continue to prevail until I actually take a moment to address it and do something about it?
Right, absolutely. And I've totally been in that place, even to the place of thinking like, oh, this is triggering me, so my boundary is telling you what to do so that I can manage my feelings.
Yes.
And I feel like that's another common mistake.
Yes.
For people, especially when people talk about boundaries. It's not exactly telling someone, don't talk to me like this, or don't do that because then I'm going to feel this way. It's a bit of both, I think.
Absolutely, I agree.
Where you have to like check in and see what's really bothering me and how can I handle that and deal with that. But I also need to say things like, the best way to speak to me is this, or the best way we can interact or accomplish X is by doing these other things or doing it in a certain way. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, which is so much more an effective way of getting to a place where you can actually have real communication and real intimacy with other people, where you're owning yours and you're asking them to own theirs, and then you're deciding that you're going to meet in this middle place,
right,
where that filter is taken away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Would love to hear some feedback about the watch party. So if anyone has any questions or some gems that they picked up, let us know in the comments.
Yes.
I was super nerve-wracked, by the way. I've never interviewed anyone. Lisane is kind of a big deal. But we always have such great conversations, so I felt really comfortable and excited about it. Also, we've got to post a picture of Mateo somewhere, obviously.
I know, that's your son. I don't know. I'll leave that to you because I didn't want to do that.
Lurking in the shadows.
But he was the best. I mean, he just hung out upstairs. He watched Shazam, and he came down for, I don't know why he came down.
I don't know, something.
He was up there for a really long time.
Yeah,
so
an hour and a half.
Great shout out to Mateo for hanging in and allowing us to do that. I just got just realized that, quick plug, the episode where I interview my daughter, Jessica Kelly, who's the founder of For the Love of All, a phenomenal human being, and lovely person. And fantastic entrepreneur. She's building a business while she's building a family. And so we had this that podcast, I'm sorry, got released today, like while we were actually on the watch party. And so that episode is available now, and we have to figure out how to get on. Maybe next week we'll do the Facebook Live and have a conversation with Jessica, because we'll be together. I'll actually be in the Northeast.
Oh, that's right.
That's right. So maybe we'll just talk about that. And what was so great about that conversation is we started off really talking about being an entrepreneur and being a new mother and what that's about, and how you navigate the change in life, in your lifestyle with the addition of a new child. And we really went into the conversation about divorce, and Jessica's dad and I got divorced while she was a teenager, and so the conversation took a turn into that depth zone, and we talked about divorce and the effects of divorce upon teenagers or upon children, and how that also impacts the communication with their parents. And so I was a little uncomfortable during that conversation, and it's not like, I mean, this was 12 years ago, and we've talked about it and dealt with it and all of that. I have to say I was a little bit uncomfortable during that conversation, being a little bit on the hot seat as a mother, publicly. And I'm also really glad that we were able to have that conversation and just talk about it, even though it was not as pleasant a conversation as where we're going to go to have sushi or, or how beautiful my granddaughter Emma is. It was that different kind of conversation. So I'm really excited that episode is dropped. What do you say?
It dropped today.
Dropped today, like an hour ago. And it's the title is A Millennial Perspective on Parenting, Divorce, and Entrepreneurial something.
Check it out on iTunes, Spotify, all the places.
Yeah, all the places where you get your podcast. The name of the podcast is Shaping Freedom, the Shaping Freedom podcast with Lisane Basquiat. And so check out that episode. It's really interesting, I think. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to share a little bit about what has happened within our family and some of the things that my family has gone through and what we've worked through, hopefully as a way to help other people who are experiencing the same thing or who have questions and who might want to just put that situation out on the table and get some support.
Yeah, I think it's like a super necessary conversation that we need to keep having, especially when we're talking about shaping freedom, because, and you mentioned this in our interview, how it's so easy to just lose your sense of self going through big changes in life. And it's one of the most important things is to hang on to who you are, where you want to be, no matter what's going on.
Absolutely. And Jessica actually made a comment that I wrote down somewhere, but she made a comment during the interview, and it was like electricity for me. And what she said was something to the effect of, which at the time she saw her dad and I as two people who were enemies against her norms, or something along that line. I don't have it with me right now, but it was something around that. And that was really profound for me. And it resonated with me because I can see that, so often you have children who, we as adults make decisions about relationships and what it is that we're going to do. And some of those decisions, especially when you have children, are really, tough decisions to make. We don't want to hurt our children, and yet we do.
Right.
And it's just a part of the human experience. It's a part of the parental experience. And it was really a little eye-opening to hear from Jessica that, her perspective at the time was that we had kind of conspired against her norms, because that really is what happens. Children are going along and, something happens and it kind of throws them a little bit off their axle, or a lot off their axle. And so I think, my perspective is that, this idea that we're going to, at some point in our lives, that enlightenment is about putting on like a nice long flowy dress and being on the top of a mountain and, smoking an incense and hey, no more problems.
Set it free.
I'm in a bubble. Actually, I'm looking at the video. I'm like, I kind of like this thing we're doing. Anyway, to kind of be in this bubble where nothing that pisses us off comes
It's
in.
not real.
It's not real. That really isn't what it's about. Enlightenment, from my perspective, is about lighting yourself up, lighting up what's going on within yourself so that you can clean it up and have more effective, more meaningful, and more productive relationships with the people that are around you, and most importantly with yourself. And so, it's yeah. I did all the dancing and I forgot.
I know it got too exciting.
Yes.
We're gonna drop that link in the comments after this is done.
Yes, we will.
So
And and so Jessica, there you are.
There she is.
Yeah, so what we're gonna do, my intention behind mentioning that is, so what we're gonna do next week is we're going to do this Facebook Live. I don't know yet whether or not this is the right time. And a lot of our audience.
Please let us know. We want to know, guys. Let us know it's a great time to have these chats.
Maybe we'll do a poll or something.
Yeah, that'd be a good
in the group and on the page, so that we can kind of get a feel. And the issue really is that, we have an audience here on the West Coast, and we also have an audience on the East Coast. And
somehow in Germany.
And in Germany.
We're big in Germany.
35% of our listeners are in Germany. We don't know who the folks are. We're so grateful for you. And we don't know who you are. So we really are trying to find a central time that works, where people, I know that you can always listen after the conversation, but we're trying to find a nice central point. So the point is, I'm really long-winded today. The point is that, so what Jessica and I are going to do is we're going to have a watch party, and then it would be a great place and time for people who want to have conversation around this topic of, certainly entrepreneurial, motherhood, and divorce. If you do want to talk about it, it'll be a great place to pose some questions to two members of the family that actually experienced this, went through it, and have gotten to the other side, all still loving each other, even though, our worlds are very different. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So really,
if you guys have questions, I would definitely suggest you dropping some questions in this thread, letting us know what you want to hear from Jess.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. And so we're going to be doing that in the Northeast,
Jersey.
Thursday, Jersey, which is where I'll be next week. All right. Cool. So
this was so much fun.
Yeah, it was.
You look like Sister Sade.
What'd she say? You look like Sister? I know. I did not know Vietnam before 4 years ago. 5 years ago now. 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
5 years.
5?
I don't know. We'll count. But anyway, did not know her, met her, and I'm like, she kind of looks familiar to me. What is that
I
about?
know.
Yeah. So anyway,
Some ancestral connection.
thank you guys for hanging. I know this was a pretty long interview followed by a pretty long 20 minutes on this call, on this live. But again, thank you so much to those of you who have joined the Shaping Freedom group, and for those who have liked the page. We're really happy that you're here. And
Yes.
yeah.
Please share it with your friends. Anybody you think would benefit from these conversations.
Please do.
Share. Let us know what you want to hear from us.
Yeah, let us know what you want to talk about. That's really what this group is about. It's just about sharing and, really having these conversations and being a sounding board and support system to each other as we navigate life's events and challenges.
Cool.
Okay, and also cheering each other on about, all of the wonderful things that so many of us are up to. Like it's not about the problems. It's about,
growth.
Yeah, the growth and leveling up. All righty, so have a fantastic week. Thank you so much for hanging with us, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
See ya. Oh, you have a mouse.